Suleiman I, later called the Magnificent in Europe and Kanuni, the lawgiver in the Ottoman world, was born in late 1494 or early 1495 and raised inside a dynasty that ruled from the Balkans to the Arab lands. As a prince, he governed frontier provinces, learning how taxes, courts, and garrisons held an empire together. When he became sultan in September 1520, the Ottoman state already had formidable armies and a strategic capital at Istanbul, but it still faced powerful enemies: the Habsburgs in Central Europe, the Safavids in Persia, and maritime rivals across the Mediterranean. Suleiman's ambition was not only to expand borders, but to strengthen institutions, law, administration, and culture so the empire could endure. His reign would become a defining era of Ottoman identity, marked by disciplined campaigns, monumental architecture, and a court that shaped politics from Hungary to Baghdad. Suleiman began his reign with decisive moves against Christian strongholds that threatened Ottoman roots. In 1521, his forces took Belgrade, a key gateway on the Danube, tightening Ottoman control over the northern frontier. The next year, he turned to Rhodes, held by the Knights of St. John, whose naval raids challenged Ottoman shipping. After a hard siege in 1522-23, Rhodes fell and the Knights withdrew, marking a major shift in Eastern Mediterranean security. These early victories showcased Suleiman's style: careful planning, heavy artillery, disciplined infantry, and a political message that the Sultan could strike both land and sea targets. They also elevated his prestige at home, strengthening loyalty among commanders and administrators who saw expansion as proof of divine favor and dynastic competence. The empire's strategic map was changing quickly, and Europe began to treat Suleiman as a central figure in continental power politics. Suleiman's most dramatic early land victory came at Mohacs in August 1526. There, the Ottoman army broke the military strength of the Kingdom of Hungary, and King Louis II died in the disaster. The outcome created a political vacuum that drew in the Habsburgs and reshaped Central Europe. Competing claims emerged. Ferdinand of Habsburg sought the Hungarian crown, while John Zapolya appealed for Ottoman support. Suleiman's strategy blended war and diplomacy, recognizing John as a vassal king to keep Habsburg influence from solidifying on the Danube. In 1529, Suleiman marched toward Vienna, aiming to end the threat in one decisive stroke. But distance, weather, and supply problems, combined with stubborn defenses, forced him to lift the siege. Even so, the campaign demonstrated Ottoman reach and kept Europe on edge. Hungary would be divided for generations, becoming the empire's key frontier zone. After the First Vienna campaign, Suleiman continued to shape Hungary through repeated pressure rather than a single knockout blow. The 1532 campaign pushed into Austrian borderlands and met fierce resistance at fortified points, proving how hard the region was to subdue quickly. By 1533, Suleiman accepted a truce with Ferdinand, shifting attention as needed across multiple fronts. When John Zapolya died in 1540 and Habsburg forces advanced again, Suleiman responded by reorganizing Hungary into a lasting structure. Campaigns in 1541 and 1543 produced three Hungaries: Habsburg Hungary in the northwest, Ottoman Hungary along the middle Danube centered on Buda, and Transylvania as an Ottoman-aligned vassal state. This arrangement turned Central Europe into a managed frontier, defended by fortresses, garrisons, and tax systems that supported long-term occupation. The struggle in Hungary became a slow grind of sieges, truces, and border warfare, an imperial chessboard where administration mattered as much as battle.
While Europe watched the Danube, Suleiman also faced a powerful eastern rival, the Safavid Empire of Persia. His first major eastern campaign in 1534-35 secured Erzurum and brought the Ottoman conquest of Iraq, including Baghdad, a prize of immense strategic and symbolic value. A second campaign in 1548-49 expanded Ottoman control around Lake Van, strengthening the frontier in eastern Anatolia. Yet Suleiman also learned the limits of conquest in rugged terrain against a mobile, resilient opponent. The third campaign in 1554-55 ended not with total victory, but with a warning: subduing the Safavids completely would be extremely costly. In 1555, the two empires signed a formal peace, stabilizing borders for a time. These Eastern wars reveal Suleiman's broader imperial reality. He was not only a conqueror of Christian fortresses, but a ruler balancing two great fronts, shifting armies and resources thousands of kilometers while keeping the empire's core institutions intact. Suleiman's empire also fought on water. Under his reign, Ottoman naval strength became formidable, and the Mediterranean turned into a stage for strategy and prestige. The most famous admiral was Hayr al-Din, known in Europe as Barbarossa, who became Capitan Pasha and helped secure Ottoman initiative at sea. In 1538, the Ottoman fleet won a major victory off Preveza against a combined Christian coalition, strengthening Ottoman control over routes and coastal strongholds. The empire expanded its North African reach as well. Tripoli fell to the Ottomans in 1551, tightening the chain of ports and bases across the southern Mediterranean. Yet the sea was never an easy domain. Major expeditions demanded shipyards, rowers, gunners, and supplies on a scale equal to land campaigns. Suleiman's naval policy linked Istanbul to Algiers, the Aegean Islands, and the Levant, creating an imperial web where commerce, piracy, diplomacy, and war blended together. The limits of Ottoman sea power were tested in the 1560s. In 1560, a Spanish-led expedition suffered a crushing defeat at Jerba, confirming Ottoman strength in North African waters. But in 1565, the Ottomans failed to capture Malta from the Knights of St. John, despite a massive effort. The siege revealed how fortified islands, disciplined defenders, and complex logistics could blunt even a great empire. Suleiman's navy also projected power farther east. Fleets operating from Egypt reached into the Indian Ocean, where the Ottomans challenged Portuguese influence, including an unsuccessful attempt to take Diu in 1538. These campaigns show that Suleiman's reign was not a single-direction expansion, but a global contest across choke points, straits, islands, harbors, and caravan routes. Sea warfare demanded endurance as much as bravery, and every failure carried costs in men, ships, and reputation. Even so, Ottoman presence remained dominant across much of the Mediterranean through the mid-16th century. Suleiman's title, lawgiver, reflects achievements beyond conquest. He presided over the refinement of Ottoman administrative law, aligning imperial practice with Islamic legal scholarship and making governance more predictable across diverse provinces. He surrounded himself with exceptionally capable officials and jurists, including grand viziers and leading scholars who shaped courts, taxation, and public order. Under his patronage, Ottoman culture flourished. Poets celebrated courtly language, artisans perfected calligraphy and metalwork, and imperial workshops produced textiles that traveled across continents. Architecture became the empire's most visible signature. The master architect Mimar Sinan created a new monumental style that reshaped Istanbul, culminating in the Süleymaniye Mosque complex, a statement of faith, power, and urban planning. Suleiman also invested in infrastructure, bridges, aqueducts, fortresses, and public kitchens, binding cities and pilgrimage routes into an imperial system. In his reign, the Ottoman state projected not only military might, but a coherent civilization with law, art, and institutions at its core. Power at Suleiman's court was not only external, it was intensely personal and political. Succession anxiety haunted dynasties, and the later years of his reign were marked by conflict among his sons. Prince Mustafa became a focus for discontent in Anatolia and was executed in 1553 on Suleiman's order, a decision that shocked contemporaries and echoed through later memory. Afterward, rivalry hardened between Selim and Bayezid. Civil war erupted in 1559, and by 1561, Bayezid was defeated and executed, leaving Selim as the clear heir. These episodes reveal the darker mechanics of empire. Stability often depended on ruthless prevention of rival power centers. Even as mosques rose and laws were refined, the palace remained a battlefield of influence, involving commanders, jurists, and powerful household networks. Suleiman's challenge was to keep the state functioning while family conflict threatened to splinter loyalties. By the 1560s, he was an aging ruler, still campaigning, still governing, and still managing the succession that would define what came next. Suleiman died in September 1566 during the campaign against the fortress of Sigetvar in Hungary, still leading war at the empire's hard frontier. His long reign, 1520 to 1566, left an Ottoman state at peak confidence, with deep administrative routines, strong fort networks, and a cultural style recognizable from Istanbul to the provinces. He expanded territory, but equally important, he shaped how the empire governed: law, taxation, courts, and public works that supported stability. His architects and artists defined an imperial aesthetic. His navy projected power across the Mediterranean. His armies pressed Europe and negotiated with Persia. Yet his era also revealed the costs of greatness: constant campaigning, heavy taxation, and dynastic fear. After him, the empire would continue, but the balance of pressure on multiple fronts grew harder to manage. Still, Suleiman's name endured as a benchmark, the ruler who combined conquest with civilization building, turning Ottoman rule into a world historical model of early modern empire.